This is a mock interview conducted by ForumIAS Academy at New Delhi. The interview panel includes eminent academicians, retired bureaucrats, and other luminaries. The objective of the program is to acquaint the candidate with the format and expectations of the personality test conducted by UPSC.
May I come in, sir?
Please come in.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
Pulkit.
Yes.
Pulkit, we are very happy to observe that you have just passed out your MBBS examination.
Yes, sir.
And in your first attempt, you will come to this level. That shows your brilliance and your perseverance, both. I also observed that you did your MBBS from Maulana, Azad, which is a very prestigious institution. I got a little bit of curiosity because you passed out class 12 in 2014 and you passed out MBBS in 22. So what happened in between?
Sir, I joined MBBS in 2016.
So what are you doing for 2 years? You are preparing for the entrance examination?
Yes, sir.
All right. So why couldn't you make in the first attempt itself in MBBS?
Sir, I feel that when I was in 12th standard, I decided a little bit late that I was going to pursue MBBS as a degree.
But you always had biology. I'm seeing that in class 12 you had biology. तो जिसने biology ली होगी तो naturally medicine के लिए try करेगा ना, नहीं तो किस लिए लिया biology?
Sir, 11th standard, I also had mathematics because I was not really sure that what I wanted to do. So I took biology as well as mathematics in 11th. So that every career option is open to me after 12th. But in 12th, when I decided that I want to do MBBS only, I left mathematics and took home science as a subject.
All right. So after having qualified your MBBS, why do you want to get into the civil services?
So I believe that this particular opportunity would provide me with a greater diversity of challenges, as well as I would be able to work on a larger and a wider scope than I would be as a medical practitioner.
No, that's fine, but medical profession is supposed to be a very noble profession, and as you said that in class 12 or class 11, you realized that you would like to become a doctor.
Yes.
So within 4 years, and when you are going through your medical education, you change your views and you wanted to be a part of civil services?
Yes, sir. So one of the primary motivations to become a doctor, apart from my affinity for the subjects, was actually a willingness to serve in society. And
as a doctor also, you will be serving the society and more meaningfully.
So the extent of meaningfulness, I think, is very subjective, that I would be able to as a doctor or as a civil servant. But yes, I consider this as as serving the society, but in a different capacity.
Do you know any other country where the doctors are opting for the civil services?
Sir, I'm not aware of any other country's civil services.
This is happening.
So one of the basic fundamentals I feel is that the qualifications for giving this exam are very generic, whereas in other countries, many countries do not have an open and a transparent system of getting civil servants, where civil servants are mainly executive appointments.
Pulkit, you are not very well informed on that. Most of the countries have got very open examination for getting into the civil services.
So I was speaking about Western Europe and US in general.
So do you think in France or in England, they have got a little vague or little opaque kind of a system to get into the services?
No, sir. A lot of civil servants in Western countries are actually executive appointments who have a background in public policy making.
Are you sure? We inherited this legacy from the British only.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, what is so beautiful about Indian administrative services as a system?
So
why this system was devised for this country? Why don't you have civil services only for the states?
So India is what I like to believe a quasi-federal country where we have our constitution itself, although federalism is one of our basic principles, but there is a centralizing tendency in certain aspects. I feel that...
No, I couldn't say it. Little slowly. You said centralizing tendencies.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
So it means that although we have a federal constitution, but there are certain aspects in it which point towards giving... So for example, the number of subjects in the new union list is more...
No, that is as per the constitution.
Yes, sir.
So there is no tendency kind of a thing. No? What is the tendency? We have got a union. Certain subjects have been allocated to union. Certain subjects have been allocated to the state. But having done that, why do you want this kind of a service? During British also, when it was not like a union and the state, even at that point of time, Indian civil services were there.
Yes, sir. So, in the interest of maintaining continuity and correspondence between center and states, there needs to be a common pool of officers that can serve in both of these aspects, and to keep the quality of servants that are joining to a certain level. I think that has been done.
Mm-hmm. All right, anyway, it's not exactly that. Anyway, tell me, what do you think of G20? Every day in the newspaper, you'll read and you'll come across news item that G20 such and such meeting is taking place at such and such place. And it's not that this is the first time G20 is happening. It happens every year. Only change is that this year we are the president of G20. But the agenda remains more or less the same. The platform remains more or less the same. So what do you think of G20? How is it bringing benefit to us?
So, as president of the G20, India can finally shape the agenda of the world in a more meaningful manner. And since we have always had a history of promoting the interests of so-called weaker countries, apart and not only of us.
So, इससे पहले कौन सा president?
So last year. So last year it was Indonesia.
All right. So what is the difference between India and Indonesia? वो भी emerging economies में था, हम भी emerging economies में. So why do you say that India has got this advantage that we will be able to take care of the emerging markets?
So the economic might and the global presence of India, as well as the population advantage that we have, makes the rest of the world obviously more capable.
But
more.
Two main summits have taken place till date. One was that of foreign ministers. Second was that of the finance ministers. Did we achieve anything out of those?
So, although I agree that in the finance ministers meeting, there was only a general communique of the president and not a formal communique of the G20. But that was not of any fault due to ours. It was the prevailing geopolitical tensions that were existing, that still continue to exist.
अगर यही चीज़ मान लीजिए कनाडा में होती या मान लो बांग्लादेश में होती, क्या डिफरेंस होता? हार्डली. वो भी ये होता आउटकम.
Sir, but if it would have been, it would have taken place in a Western country which is seen as pro-US, then maybe China and Russia won't have even come to the table, which they did this time.
How do you say that? It's only your presumption. In international fora, people do come in spite of differences.
So this summit, since it's in India, there is an increased interest from the Russians as well as the Chinese and other countries, which if it would have been in a Western country, they would have maintained a symbolic presence and not engaged as much as they are doing right now.
All right. Again, I'm into the international affairs. What is happening in Israel? Does it have any impact on India?
So there are protests going on against the government's proposed judicial reforms in Israel.
Why there are so many protests?
So because it is a general feeling in the society that these protests, these reforms are not reforms, but they will take away the power of the judiciary and put the executive and the legislature at a more advantageous position than the courts.
So do you think it's a good thing or bad thing?
So I feel that separation of powers is essential, and which we do see today. I always consider the executive as a sword and the judiciary as a shield. where judiciary is the final guarantor of our fundamental rights as in India.
So what are its implications for India?
Sir, I feel that it is their internal matter, and although we are seeing tussles between the executive and
We are
judiciary.
not interfering in their business. They are not interfering in our business. But if something is happening somewhere and which is perceived to be a friend of India, do you think we had to learn some lessons from it? From that?
Sir, I think that Israel is a very close friend of India, but even in our personal friendships, we should not defend the undefendable.
We are not. I'm not asking you to defend what is happening or what is not happening in Israel. I say, can we learn something from this which is happening in Israel?
Sir, we can learn that no matter what, people do have a belief and a trust in the judicial system, and there should not be any attempts to change the balance of powers between different organs of government, because
So do you think that there is some kind of attempt by the executive to take away the powers of the Supreme Court in India?
No, sir.
No. All right. Okay. Tell me now, I'm coming to a question of economy. Every day we are reading about additional Tier 1 bond. You know what exactly is this?
Sir, additional Tier bonds 1 or 81 bonds as they are called are bonds that a bank uses to maintain a counter-cyclical buffer to adhere to the Basel norms for banking
What
regulation.
exactly is this? How is it different than the other bonds? And why this was in news?
So they are different from bonds because other bonds or normal bonds have assurance of being recapitalized, but 81 bonds, it is not can be written off if a bank is facing failure if the central bank allows
invest
it.
in bond, 81 bond. अगर मुझे मालूम है कि अगर किसी वजह से बैंक फेलियर हो रहा है या बैंक में कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं तो बैंक कैन राइट इट ऑफ इज लाइक एन इक्विटी. So why should I invest in 81 bond?
So because 81 bonds provide a higher rate of return, and if the bank is well capitalized and is stable, if I am researching beforehand before investing.
Right. Okay, very good. So why was it in news in India and somewhere in Europe also?
So in India, it was in news because Yes Bank had asked to write off their 81 bonds, but the RBI had refused.
RBI has refused. Are you sure?
Sir, I'm not sure, but it was in relation to Yes Bank's position.
You are
only.
right. Absolutely, you are right. They have written in it. However, people have gone to the courts and courts have escaped.
Yes, sir, courts
Not
have.
RBI. RBI is with the Yes Bank, by the way. And why was it in news in Europe?
So because Credit Suisse is a very famous.
वहाँ क्या हुआ?
Sir, that bank is also on the verge of failing, and the low 81 bonds have been written off by this.
Yes. So अगर वहाँ हो सकता है तो यहाँ भी हो सकते हैं. All right. Very good. My last question, because you are a doctor and corona is again surging. What are your expectations? What is your analysis on this?
So 2 days back and yesterday as well, we have had the largest number of cases in Delhi as well as in India since last September, which I think is a very cyclical procedure for any infectious disease, that it has cycles. But keeping in mind that we have developed a hybrid immunity due to continuous exposure to the virus as well as a well-functioning vaccination program, I do not expect hospitalizations to rise and it to pass as a simple flu, which we see every season.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll request my colleague to take over.
Thank you, sir. Pulkit, now taking this question forward, what sir had asked you. We had earlier H3N2, right? There was a wave of H3N2. Now we are having this XBB 1.16. Can I say that, or can there be a possibility that XBB 1.16 is a mutation of H3N2?
No, sir, they are two different viruses.
Why these are two different viruses?
Sir, the H3N2 is a variation of the bird flu virus of the H5N1, where the histaminase and neuraminidase enzymes of this particular virus are different. hence the name H3N2, which is the type of the enzyme that is present. XBB.1.16 is a variant of the Omicron variant of the COVID virus that we saw in January and December last year.
So now this XBB 1.16 is what you're saying is a subvariant of Omicron. How is this Omicron different from the first variant that emerged from China?
So the first variant that emerged from China is the alpha variant, and the main difference between Omicron and the alpha variant is the genetic sequence of the spike protein of the virus.
Okay, so since you are from Delhi, have you ever visited Mohalla Clinic?
No, sir.
Do you have any idea about Mohalla Clinic?
Yes, sir.
How does it work?
So Mohalla Clinic is a different sort of healthcare model which does not follow Indian public health standards. It is a very hyper-local model. In that, there is a generalist MBBS doctor that is present, apart from paramedical staff, where a phlebotomist who draws blood samples is also present. There is a nursing midwife as well as a lab technician. In that, there are general medicine is practiced there, along with basic investigations are also done in Mohalla clinics.
Now, considering that you are a doctor, MBBS rather, how do you see this concept of Mohalla clinic? What is the relevance? Do you think that it is a good step, or it needs some modification? Or should completely be discarded?
Sir, I think that the main reason for having a Mohalla clinic model is to decongest the larger hospitals, which actually puts a burden on the doctors as well as increases the waiting time for the patients who frequent these hospitals, so that at least basic treatment and basic investigations can be done at a local level, where it is less time taking as well as convenient for the patient themselves. The one change I feel that would be helpful is increasing the accessibility of obstetrics and gynecological services in these centers, because still almost every expectant mother has to travel to a larger hospital for basic investigations and basic care.
Now, tell me something. What are the top 4 non-communicable diseases that result in 80% of the deaths in India?
So number 1 is high blood pressure or hypertension. Second is diabetes mellitus. Third one is cardiovascular diseases, and fourth one is cancers.
Right. Now tell me, if you are posted in a district outside Delhi, and you are not allocated any special budget for addressing these concerns, what would be your low cost model to address these 4 diseases?
So the first step I would take is to actually go through statistics about the prevalence and the incidence of the diseases, that how many patients are there of a particular disease, as well as how many people are freshly diagnosed with a disease every year. And then I would take a step according to the percentage of illness and death that are caused by a particular disease.
So now you have got data. Then what?
Sir, then I would see, for example, if it is diabetes mellitus or hypertension or cancers, I would like to promote preventive screening first if the incidence is high, because these screening procedures are very cost effective and help to curb the disease at an initial stage, which decreases the likelihood of complications, which obviously decreases the expenditure that we have to do. I think prevention at the primary level, I think that I would like to do.
Right. Have you read this Rajasthan Right to Health Bill?
Yes, sir.
Why doctors are opposing this, or doctors and hospitals are opposing this bill?
So the main concerns that they have is that the government has not actually spelled out a separate budgetary expenditure about the compensation and the reimbursement that they have spoken about in the bill. Also, the grievance redressal system is not well defined. It's too vague currently since rules have not been published. Thirdly, there also is also the issue of excessive bureaucratic control by the state health authority, which can take decisions with respect to healthcare delivery. And there is also discrepancy about the body that will take decision, because for one person that might be an emergency, but for a doctor that might not be an emergency. And if the person complains to the police, then the doctor will have to frequent the police station and the courts to get redressal.
So you agree that there are scope of changes in the bill. What changes would you suggest?
Sir, I would first like to specify the budgetary allocation that has been done specifically for this bill. Then I would suggest, I would form a proper grievance redressal system, a multi-tiered for appeals as well as first complaints. So thirdly, I would like to designate the State Medical Council or the State Medical Association, which will first investigate the cases like we have in malpractice cases, because these commissions have specialized experience and knowledge, and they should be the ones to decide whether a particular illness was an emergency or not, and if the treatment followed was appropriate or not, and not a state health authority, but doctors themselves. So finally, I would also like to have a fixed percentage and a upper cap of the expenditure that would be provided to a hospital based on the services that they're providing.
My last question to you. Should there be right to health for every citizen of this country?
Yes, sir. So the Supreme Court in 2 separate cases has said that right to health is a part of Article 21 of the Constitution. And I think that right to health is essential for a welfare democracy like ours.
Thank you.
So Pulkit, earlier you have stated that you want to join administrative services for serving the society.
Yes.
So I want to understand that during the earlier waves of COVID, what steps did you take in order to serve the society as an MBBS student?
So in the first wave, I was still a student, so I was not eligible to serve. In the second wave, I had just started my internship and I did ICU duties for more than a month, where I was involved actively in patient care. In the third wave, I was involved with obstetric deliveries of mothers who had contracted COVID.
Okay. So you have also stated that service to the society is a very subjective term. I want you to please elaborate on this.
Sir, what I said was that the extent to which I would be able to serve society is subjective when we consider administrative service and medical service. That is what I meant, that for somebody, simple one-to-one patient interaction might be the extent that he is willing to go to serve the society, whereas for another, it might be millions of or billions of people who he might serve, and then he would feel that he has done his bit.
Okay, fine. So please assess India's response in the earlier wave of COVID, and also tell me what we could have done better.
So in the first wave, since there was actually a lack of information about COVID itself and the treatment, then there is very little we could have done, because hindsight is always 20/20, but this is information that we didn't have. In the second wave, I think industrial oxygen would have been able to, should have been diverted very early to medical use, as well as stopping of mass gathering could have been done at an earlier stage when the incidence was rising and not at its peak. Thirdly, I was very impressed by the speed of vaccination rollout, as well as the increase in the number of ICU beds and ventilators in the country.
Okay, fine. So you like to watch movies based on Second World War? Please tell us about the 3 important lessons that we can draw from Second World War that are applicable in current geopolitical climate.
Sir, the first lesson that we can learn is that if any ruler has expansionist tendencies, then appeasement is not a policy that we should follow, because that is what led to capture of Czechoslovakia and Poland in the first place. Secondly, we have to see that human rights violations are an essential part of global governance. And thirdly, we have to see that nuclear power is not a solution, but to any war.
Okay. So there is a criticism that India is actually following an appeasement policy with respect to China. Do you believe it?
Sir, I feel that the India and China equation is a rather complicated one, and we cannot call it as simple appeasement. But there have been skirmishes on the border for the last 3 years that have been going on, and we have had a calibrated nor or less neither a heightened response, which is maintaining the status quo till now. And I think that is a very appropriate response considering the situation at hand.
Do you think India has radically shifted its response towards China in last few years?
So initially, India had tried to cultivate a very strong friendship with China, which culminated in the 2018 Kerala visit of the Chinese premier. But since then, there have been mixed signals from the Chinese government and policy making, where they have challenged our territorial integrity and sovereignty. And I think that a shift in policy is not only needed, but is essential to maintain our external borders.
Okay, fine. So you have been a house captain in school and coordinator in college fest, right? So these are leadership positions. Please tell some of the values that you have learned in a leadership position that can help you further in civil services.
So one of the first things I learned was the benefit and the helpfulness that teamwork has. Secondly, taking decisions after listening to every opinion and not taking unilateral decisions. Thirdly, having an open mind and looking at different aspects of a situation, because ultimately you have the responsibility even if your teammate makes a mistake, and meticulousness in ensuring that every aspect of my job is complete. That are the 4 things I think I learned.
Okay, fine. My last question. How artificial intelligence can be leveraged to transform primary health?
So at primary level, although it will take a long time for AI to be commercialized and spread on a wide scale, but it can help to analyze data, to put out statistics before other softwares can do. Otherwise as well, it can also help us to identify appropriate strategies to tackle certain diseases that are prevalent in the society.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Hello, Pulkit. I'll elaborate on the last question itself, the AI question on medical science. Can you think of other technologies also that can be utilized in medical science?
So one of the first is the blockchain technology, which is being touted as a solution to the Ayushman Bharat digital mission, where blockchain will be used to store patients' data as well as healthcare facility and registry data. So other than that, so I'm not sure about.
How about telemedicine? Can you think of other solutions like telemedicine?
So telemedicine is a very innovative solution, but it has certain issues as well, where the one of the first issues is that there is a digital divide in this country. And since telemedicine is mostly useful to people who are in unserved areas, it is essential that these areas are provided with high-speed internet facilities for them to avail these services. Otherwise as well, there are certain diseases where physical examination has to be conducted by a doctor, and neither the doctor nor the patient feels comfortable on a screen. Otherwise, it is a very innovative step where we have programs like 𝐂𝐨𝐮𝐬𝐞 by the central government as well as the �សេहत scheme by the defense forces.
Okay, all right. Can you tell me what are the issues that are faced by Indian agriculture? Name any 10.
10. So one of the first issue is that there is a low availability of high quality seeds. Our seed replacement ratio is lesser than it should be. Secondly, we have a high fertilizer burden. Thirdly, we are mainly a rain-fed economy. Okay. Fourthly, sir, we have the pumps we are using for getting rainwater are coal and diesel powered. So fifthly, we are cultivating monoculture crops in a large part of this country. Okay. So we are not exporting high value products as much as for example, the animal husbandry sector is in agriculture. Okay. So seventh is that we are still have low levels of mechanization as compared to other countries. So the cooperative sector has not been successful in every part of the country, where in the west and the south it is more successful than the north and the east. Okay. So the marketing mechanism is still not.
All right, most of the points were related to profitability only, but all right, at least you went till 10. That's a good thing. All right, China is intervening in West Asia now, right? What is it doing?
So China has recently brokered a peace accord between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
What are the implications for India?
So on one hand, it can be helpful to India because good relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia will inevitably lead to good relations, or at least better relations between Iran and US, because Saudi Arabia is a major buyer of American weapons. So we can actually hope to achieve better relations with Iran, where we can import oil from them. So, but Chinese presence in the region is still a cause for concern, where it is starting to push into regions where the West has maintained dominance for decades. And I think that since Iran and India have a very close relation, where we have a Chabahar port, that is a part of our string of pearls strategy.
Can you think of some a similar initiative that was taken by India in West Asia?
Sir, we had the Delhi Declaration about Afghanistan, where we held a regional cooperative.
How about I2U2?
Yes, I2U2 as well was India, Israel, United States and UAE.
And there was a Abraham Accord also. It was a US initiative.
Yes.
What was that?
Sir, Abraham Accords were peace agreements or a resumption in diplomatic activity between Israel and the Saudis.
And what did it achieve? Have there been any outcomes of Abraham Accord now?
Sir, the Saudis have actually, first of all, they have accepted that Israel is a sovereign country and flights have been resumed over Israeli territory. And the agreement with the Saudis actually decreased the offensive actions of the Israelis in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
What are the defense relations between India and Israel?
So, India and Israel have had a mixed bag of relations since India got independence.
Specifically on defense.
So, India is one of the largest buyers of Israeli defense products. Even when we did not have diplomatic relations with Israel, we still imported arms and we just changed the made in Israel stickers on these products. As well as we have seen that Israeli defense hardware is high technology hardware, and we have imported for example, Heron drones and armed Heron drones from them. There are a lot of agreements between India and Israel about coordination and cooperation for defense hardware and upgradation of technologies as well.
Okay, all right. Last question. Can you name any 3 Second World War movies that you watched?
So one of them is Valkyrie, which was released in 2007. Mm-hmm. So second one that I personally like is Fatherland, which was released in 1994. And the third one is Downfall, which is a German movie.